Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments, midweek model meet. Now, I just have to quickly check something because I have some guests who haven't arrived, and it may be that I've sent them the wrong link. So bear with me a second. Let me have a little look here. Okay, I have sent people the wrong link. So bear with me 1 second. And oh dear, what have I done? Or I may have sent people the right link and this is the wrong link. No, this should be. Yes, this is the wrong link. Oh dear. Okay. I need to do a bit of jiggery pokery because I have sent people the correct link, but I'm streaming on the wrong link. So bear with me while I sort this out, which I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do. All right, let me. Dear, there's you can't get the stuff these days, you know. It's just right. Okay, what I've done is I've actually sent people the stream, normal stream, and I'm streaming on the members only stream for tonight. Ah dear, you couldn't write it, could you? Right, there we go. There's one. There's two. Okay, there we go. Right. Now, let me restart that and start with inviting in Gary. Gary, good to see you.
Hi, Alex. How you doing, mate?
Now, you were in the right place. I'm in the wrong place.
Okay, it's fine. We got there eventually. There eventually.
So,
are you keeping well?
I am, thank you. Yes, and that was the sound of the Heineken. It's green, which is why it appears as a stealth beer.
Yeah.
Actually, given to me by a friend of Maria's. So free beer is even better.
Finest kind. Finest kind.
Let me invite in Marcus as well. Hello, Marcus.
Good evening.
Hey, Marcus.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Let me also just send this to Lucas. I don't know whether he's online, but I did send him the correct link, as I sent both of you, but I'm streaming on the wrong one. So, user error. I don't know what it is about Wednesdays at the moment. I seem to be a little bit cursed. But anyway, how are you both?
Good. Good, thanks. Yeah.
Hump day, you know. Almost there.
Well, yeah. It's beer time for me, so your good health.
Good for you.
Good. And your good health too. Yeah. I'm on holiday next week, so I'm very happy. Thank you.
Oh, very good.
I'm on holiday, and I've got content scheduled for the 2-3 weeks as well. So it's properly done.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we're flying to Cologne and going down by river to Budapest.
Oh, very nice.
Weeks. So down the Rhine and the Danube.
So now that we have guests on board, let's have a look and see who's in the chat. So we have Julian Hall. Welcome to you. Simon's Modelling
Hey,
Shed.
Julian.
Adrian Hook. Nick Johnson. Mystery Box Nick, of course. We have me. We have Stuart Graham Green. We have Mario Saliba. Travis Thompson. David Markey. Good seeing familiar faces. We've got Phil Pascoe. We've got John Alec. Welcome, John.
Hey, John.
John, you're quite welcome to join the stream as well. I know it's a little bit earlier for you there now and commuting stuff. If you want the link, you'll have to ping me in Discord because I'm in the wrong place. We got the Little Things Junkie. We have Pete McDubbs. We have Polygon. Who else is here? World War II Scale Models Dave. Good to see you, Dave. Good supporter of the channel. We've got Craig Dukes. A lot of people saying hello to each other, which is always nice to see. We've got Steve Horman, Phil, Colin Berry. We've got Casey. Good to see you, Casey. Hans Morbus. Me again for some reason. Oh, say the wrong link. We have Andy Freeman, Ian Ellison, Exploring Unseen. Welcome. We have Dave Fairclough, Stuart Bremer, Andy Bowden, and I think I'm getting Colin Berry. I think I've mentioned. I'm getting close to present day. John Christmas. Good to see you, John. Hope you're doing well. And we've got Adam McDonald, John Best. That's a great name. The best name. And we have Erinville. So welcome everybody to this evening and this little discussion. So the topic I put here is really driven by a video I put up. When was it? Yesterday? Saturday? I don't know when it was. Monday. It was Monday. Having a bank holiday always throws me. Never know what day it is. And that, of course, was this one. Oh. No, that was not the right one. Wrong window. Where is it? Stop that screen. Share screen. This one. No. This one. Here we go. Too many windows open. So, this one on the Space Wolves from Warhammer 40k. It's a new army for obviously Games Workshop's game. And it is a really nice set of figures. There are only figures in the box, as well as books and data bits for the actual game itself. But of course, is this scale modeling? So a lot of people, so members in the Discord chat, and people commenting on the video, you know, kind of one of the common themes I would say was it looked like really nicely detailed sculpts and, you know, injection molding, but not for me. And that kind of got me thinking, well, where does, and this kind of encompasses other things. Marcus, I know you've done quite a lot of 40k models in the past. You know, traditionally, scale modeling is thought of as military, and also, you know, non-military. But I mean, the majority of our hobby tends to be military. Aircraft tend to be a bit more popular than vehicles. Obviously, in the States, there's a lot of cars, but not so much in Europe or in Japan. So where do these boundaries, and let me get rid of that screen now, I'm going to demonstrate the point. So where do these boundaries come in? Now, guys, in the chat, if you've got any questions, as always, if you put QQQ in capital letters or question in capital letters, if you've got a question, just so that it helps us to pick it out of the chat as things go by, especially because there's three of us. I go off on tangents anyway, so Marcus and Gary, I've got no chance. But at least I have other people to blame.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So Gary, let's start with you, because I don't think you're a traditional 40k person. I think you mentioned that you did have.
No, I've got one box of them, some Space Marines that I've started to paint.
Box
Yeah.
of them, which we mentioned, I think the last time you were
Yeah.
on. What do you kind of put Games Workshop and Warhammer, either Age of Sigmar or their 40k? They also have, of course, the Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings stuff, and some of the small games as well that they do, but all really focused around the game. They're not really, although they are, and they claim to be, the producers of the greatest miniatures in the world. Is that scale modeling? What's your kind of view on it?
Well, my first slightly more contentious point would be, who cares?
Yeah.
Because to me, it's about, you've got something that either you've sculpted or you've assembled or someone's made for you, that you've then painted and decorated. You've used some creativity, some imagination. It's done your mental health the world of good. And if you're happy at the end and someone comes around to your house and says, oh, wow, what's that? Did you do that? And you said, actually, yes, I did. And you're proud of it. Job done. I don't care what it is. I used to do a lot of miniature wargaming, sort of 15mm, 18mm. I had, I don't know, probably about 2,500 painted figures at one point. Is that scale modeling? Well, kind of. It is a scale and it is kind of modeling, but they were just pieces on a chessboard to me in a way. Although I was absolutely obsessed about strap colors and cuff colors and whether the pom-poms were green with a red dot or white with a green, depending on what battalion they were, all sorts of stuff like that I used to get into. But that was sort of feeding my the obsession to try and get that level of detail into things so that I could look at them and identify them rather than picking them up and turning them up. Oh, okay, that's the 1st battalion of death. Okay, fine, I know who that is now. But yeah, are they scale models? Yeah, they probably are. Did I get a lot of enjoyment out of doing them? Absolutely loved it. It was a therapeutic part of the whole wargame experience. Now, if these figures, as I say, I've had one box of them. I'm astonished by the quality of the molding. Some companies could really learn a lot about molding technology from Warhammer. Mentioning no names, obviously, but I think we know who we're talking about recently. They're inventive. They're inventive. They're creative, and it's not like you buy a box of 10 figures, and the instructions say, right, figure number 1, you get part 14. You get, oh no, you mix and match. You make up what you want. You are in charge of this. You can do what you like. It's your creativity that comes out. And if you want to paint them blue, like on the box, great. If you want to paint them another color, great too. Why not? I don't see. My other point would be, I've seen on some videos techniques like metallics done on fantasy figures and Warhammer figures and figures that I would never normally paint myself because it's not my thing. But if I've got, I don't know, a brass shield on the back of a vehicle and I paint it brass, and it looks pretty boring, if I use those same non-metallic techniques, they can look spectacular. So I've learned something from some. Who am I to say whether that's good or bad or what? I don't see there should be a lot more crossover in experience and techniques and chatting and also the technology of making the things as well. That's just me.
So there we go, guys. We've answered the question. So join me next week for.
Thanks, guys.
How about you, Marcus? Because I mean, on some of Scale Modeling Live on a Friday evening, you're often tinkering with a Warhammer model or two.
I am still. Yeah, I've dabbled. I'm not a diehard Warhammer, and I don't play the game. I just do it for the build and for the paint. That's the only reason I'm doing it. And as already explained, you can incorporate the same techniques in other areas as well. And I don't like the gatekeeping of, oh, there's a fine line or there's a huge cavernous, between the two. No, it's not. Indeed, I said, you're paying for the plastic. It's what you have in your head, your imagination that comes up with the final product. And if you can crisscross and mismatch and stuff, that's perfect. I mean, how else do you scratch build? Is that scale modeling then? Of course it is. But you take pieces from different universes to create something astonishing, right? So
just looking across at the chat here, there's kind of a couple of camps developing, which is kind of why I think this is quite an interesting topic. So let's see who started. So Simon's modeling shed very correctly echoes Gary there. Depends what floats your boat. Let's see some general chat. Nick says, to me, absolutely it's modeling, but scale modeling is modeling a real life object, which I think is a potentially contentious issue.
If I build a 1/500 Star Trek Enterprise, that's not scale modeling then. I mean, it's fantasy.
Yeah.
But it's scale. Well, I don't know. You tell me.
I think this is the interesting piece, right? Because I think that is a very timely addition, Marcus, because I think a lot of people think of scale modeling in that terms of a defined scale of a real life subject, but then real life, what is classed as real life? And like you say, Star Trek. Is it because it's a series in real life that is depicting a fictional thing that people think of it as more valid than something like Warhammer or fantasy series? Let's see. We also have Craig said, I think the key word here is scale. These are soulless models, but not really to a particular scale. But as it has been said, it's not really relevant. And then Julian says, a scale model is simply a representation of a large object, either historical, modern, or fictional. Given that tabletop wargaming figures are scale models. I think Julian also makes a point here. What art scale Warhammer has a fixed scale, 28mm? Well, I would take one issue with that, Julian, is that a fixed scale for Warhammer, they've got a very fluid idea of what's fixed, right? Because they have 28, they also have 32mm heroic scale. They are notorious with scale creep as well. We've got the Primaris Space Marines, which are bigger than normal Space Marines, so they could make bigger minis. But I take your point. They are generally meant to be a scale. That scale might be slightly undefined, but then going to Marcus's point of sci-fi subjects, quite often you get some fairly fluid, 1 to 2800, 1 to 56, 1 to 188, all kinds of things for Star Wars and Star Trek figures, or models, I should say. Polygon says, I embrace Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, and scale modeling, all as part of the same hobby I love. For me, they're all part of the same umbrella concept. They bring me joy, fun, and a creative outlet, which I think is exactly the kind of point that Gary was making there. Hans also says, they look great in dioramas. I made one for my son with a Tesla coil for thunder and a lava landscape. Nice.
Yeah, sounds good.
So that's kind of what I was alluding to, and kind of what made me think about this is there does seem to be a couple of camps in the larger, let's say, modeling fraternity of people that kind of regard scale modeling, let's call them purists. I don't mean to kind of...
I think there's a bigger divide between armor and civilian. modeling. I think that's where the real canyon is. Sorry, what I've noticed during my time on the air.
Maybe so. I mean, I think everybody knows my opinion. I very much echo Gary's thoughts and what Marcus said there as well. I think we can be. I don't think this is a big enough hobby or serious enough to be involved in, let's call it, splitting. You know, the popular people's front of Judea or the people's popular front of Judea. Doesn't really matter. Yeah. Splitters that they are. For me, I think one of the things that Gary mentioned there, the amount of techniques that are present in, let's call it, miniature painting, for instance, which doesn't really pretend or, let's say, aim to be scale modeling. But in terms of figure painting, you know, if we want to learn, you can do an awful lot of good by watching, and I've mentioned them before, people like Ninjon and Marco Frissoni, and there's a whole wealth of figure painters out there who do amazing work. Marcus, you often have on your screen.
Yeah, I do scream on my screen.
But quite often you have. I've forgotten her name now.
Annika
on, who has painted some amazing figures.
She is very good. She's picked it up very quickly, but she has an artistic background as well. She's very good with colors and blending and stuff like that. And when I introduced her to plastic figures instead of a flat medium like paper or canvas, she really took to that, and now she can't stop ordering stuff from Temu and AliExpress, and I'm getting pictures and look what I just got. It's gonna be fun to paint. So I was like, oh wow, I ruined this girl's life. Poor her husband. Be the first time, True, very true. No, so that's I think that's an example of a person who can change and switch medium as she fits, and use both techniques on both ends, and take quickly to things, stuff like that. So yeah.
So Science Modeling Shed said, question, is real life painting a hobby?
Well, painting
for some people.
Stuff.
Depends what sort of painting. I mean, painting walls. Not sure that's a hobby. That sounds more like work. But painting landscapes and portraits and things, yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
Phil makes an interesting point. There is a filming model of the Enterprise, so a scale model of a real model is a scale model? Question mark.
Ooh, wow, modelception.
Modelception.
Wow. Go and start drawing some Venn diagrams, I dare you.
Oh, man.
Okay, Ned Luby, not seen you before. Welcome. Well, what if we went in the other direction, working models like live steam traction engines and railways? What about demonstration of a mechanical principle over rigid adherence to a scale appearance? Now, that's an interesting take as well, because I mean, sometimes you go to like a village fete, or there'll be a celebration of Steam Day, particularly in the UK. I don't know what it's quite like. Whether in Sweden or in the Netherlands, Marcus, they have that tradition. I'm not sure.
Not so much in the Sweden, but
well, in the UK, the heart of the Industrial Revolution.
Absolutely.
Netherlands, I think, have more brick and mortar shops for modeling trades than they do have anything else. So yeah. But
you'll often see quite large scale, like quarter scale, or something like a beam engine, or some sort of steam contraption.
Yeah.
And obviously, typically they're metal. But is that any less a scale model? I would say more in a lot of respects, because it works, right, as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting take on it, I have to say.
And also, you've got a lot of redesign to do because of the scale effect of modeling. You can't just make a 20th scale steam engine and expect the materials to work the same way, because at that scale they perform differently. You can't have a steam boiler by scaling down to 1/20th the thickness of the boiler, for example. Things it just doesn't work. So there's a lot of sort of material science and thermodynamic reasons why you can't make them really, really, really small. So you're going to make a lot of compromises. So there's always those, I remember years ago, those Mamod that made loads of like smallish traction engines that you had like a little methylated spirits burner and a tiny little engine. They would whiz around, but they show the principle. They're not an exact model in terms of the engineering of the engine, although a lot of the actual sort of structure and wheels were sort of shrunk down pretty well. But you know, that's why not? Well, that's a model. It's as much a model as say a 200-pound Hornby locomotive that looks fantastic on the outside. It's got a great big, you know, you imagine scaling that back up to the size of a wound motor in the middle of the train carriage whizzing down. The sort of gyroscopic effect of that much mass. You could only have straight railways in the UK. You wouldn't be able to take corners. Yeah, this whole scale thing has its limits for physical things. It's the old story of why don't airfix put pilots in everything? Why does the Mosquito only have one pilot? Doesn't have a navigator? Because there's no room. Yeah. Because the plastic has to be scaled to that thickness, 72 times smaller, or you can't make the kit. So there's no physical room for the pilot. You make compromises, but you know.
So that actually brings in quite an interesting piece as well, which I think we've talked about in other streams, airfix and chill and other things. Scale effect and the limitations of injection molding do exactly that, right? So we only have to think of, we can think of a fairly large scale. The 1/24 scale airfix Spitfire has a full engine, as we know. It looks fantastic. However, you try to put the sides on that and take them off and stuff. It's difficult because, of course, the sides of the aircraft in injection molded plastic, if you were to scale it up, they're not quite a millimeter thick. Say they're half a millimeter, let's be generous. So if you scaled that up 24 times, they're 12 millimeters thick, which is an armor plate. It would make the Spitfire, I think, somewhat prohibitively heavy. But of course, if you actually scaled them to the thickness, I don't know what thickness a Spitfire cowling, because the skin around the engine actually isn't taking, it's not really stressed skin around there because you've got the framing. So it doesn't need to be thick. It doesn't need to hold like stress of the airframe. So it's pretty thin, probably thinner than actually that plastic is in 1/24 scale. If you make that 24 times smaller, I doubt there's an injection molding machine that could reliably mold that thickness of plastic, 1/50th of a millimeter, 20 micron thick plastic. So we aren't actually, and this is something I've mentioned before, we aren't actually really scale modelers anyway, in a lot of respects. Panel lines are another one. The average panel line, if you scaled it up to whatever scale it is, would be a trench on an aircraft, because as a scale modeler, or scale modelers, we're not trying to represent that exactly. It is really what Mario has said here. He comments, the way I see it, modeling is a way to capture the essence and mythic of the subject in miniature. Also, dioramas really capture the history of the subject. Yeah. It really is that. We are creating, like with those panel lines, the illusion of what we see in the full-scale subject.
The visual effect.
Yeah. And as Gary said, physics doesn't change because we make things smaller. Physics remains the same. So its interaction with those objects is as a small object, not as the full-size one. So we have to recreate that. We have to fool our eyes. And this is where miniature painters really, I think we can learn from, because they're experts at creating the fooling of the eye to the three-dimensional subject. to make it look like folded cloth in shadow, or the 5 o'clock shadow on a man's face, and things like this. We're doing the same thing with washes and panel lines, and pre-shading and post-shading and oil washes and all of these effects. Again, it's not really, scale it up through whatever scale you're doing to the final thing. It wouldn't look like that. But that's not the point. So let's see what other comments we've had in the time that we've been chatting. Nick Johnson says it doesn't matter what you collect or build as long as it makes you happy and puts you in a good place. So that, I think, is a good mantra for any hobby. If you play golf, right, and it makes you miserable because you can't attain the handicap you want, because you always hook the ball or slice it, or it costs too much and stuff, don't golf anymore. Take up a hobby that makes you happy. If you enjoy going out and trying to improve and get that handicap down, that's what counts. So absolutely. And I think scale modeling is absolutely no different.
One thing you were mentioning about the Spitfire, I remember when we visited the factory where they were making them, there's one part of the rear structure, the back end of the cockpit section. There's a piece that has a very, very thin film of plastic in. And he said the way they actually make that is by because these have got like several pins all around to maintain pressures at different levels across the tool. They just relieve the pressure very, very slightly in that part of the tool. Essentially, that very thin veneer of plastic is flash that's deliberately put there because it's very, very, very thin. They can't create a mold to mold it that thinly, so they just tweaked it. And yeah, we can do that. Don't worry, we'll make you.
It's imaginative.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
So because the chat is any group of people is always greater than a single individual, and the chat are proving it here because Julian has gone away and done my homework for me and said a Lancaster's aluminium skin was 3/8 of an inch thick, 0.132 millimeters at 70-second scale. So yeah, 130 microns is not going to be sustaining any sort of weight. You would crush it trying to pick it up. It would collapse under the weight.
Human hair diameter roughly. Something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it would be thinner than flash, exactly.
Yeah.
Because, of course, plastic doesn't have the material strength scaled of steel or aluminium or duraluminum or whatever the alloys are. We're not putting the ribs in and stressing that to actually take the load and spread it across the internal structure because we don't have an internal structure. So scale modeling or modeling, I would say more generally, is always going to be a compromise. And I think that's worth bearing in mind when we then come to this discussion. So as to where things come, I mean, for me, Warhammer, they make plastic models, you stick them together, you paint them. They are scale representations, even if, heroic scale is a scale. The proportions of Warhammer minis, I mean, everybody would be, a stocky dwarf if they were to the proportions of Warhammer. Other war games and skirmish games, things like Infinity, have much more realistically proportioned minis, but they do tend to be more delicate. So they tend to mold out of metal rather than plastic because making them out of plastic, they become quite delicate, easy to break if you're picking them up and moving around. So there's a compromise, once again, between the scale models and the practicalities of using them in a war game. This is why if you look at Bolt Action, Flames of War, the figures again tend to be sort of shorter and chunkier, stockier, because they're easier to move around and not break. This is why in the early days, Airfix, when they made their 170 6/72 scale figures. They're made of vinyl. One, it's cheaper. Two, they're bendy, so they don't break. It's lighter. You can drop them on the floor. You can tread on them to a certain extent, like kids do. And they were designed as toys, really, rather than accurate scale models. Although, actually, they're pretty good molds. Simon's Modeling Shed said there are some role-playing games showing up at model shows. Absolutely. So, I mean, Warhammer has been accepted in IPMS competitions for many years now.
Yeah.
You go to Telford, you will see some astonishing figures. There's a lot of knights, the big they're about 8 to 12 inches. I mean, you can get bigger, but they get very expensive. Those sorts of figures, primarily because they're a decent size. They've got a good canvas,
you can see what you're doing.
You can see what you're doing, and they look visually impressive. It's a bit like doing, if you do one 144 scale tank, it's probably not going to get as much attention as a 135th scale tank on a modeling competition table, right? Just visually it draws the eye more, Nick says, does my Spitfire look right compared to my only reference, the Ladybird Book of Flight? Yes, okay. Fair enough. So on the flip side of that then, where would you say that breaks down and it starts to become, okay, that's not a scale model, or, it doesn't fall into the remit of our hobby?
I think there's a lot of resin prints out there, right? There's no assembly required, right? That's more like figure painting, in my opinion, right? But I don't knock it. There's a lot of work going into what they're doing. For me, anything you can build and put together, I think that's scale modeling. That's what I do. I'm a builder. I'm not a painter. I try to paint, but
Marcus says he's a builder, but there are certain projects which we won't.
Well, we can discuss PE at another time. Does that belong in scale modeling? No, I'm not so sure. Just kidding.
So, a couple of comments in the chat here that I want to bring in before I go to Gary. So, the first one, Little Things Junkie says Lego. And Simon's Modeling Shed says made out of wood. What's your take on those, Gary?
To me, they're model making. I've seen some phenomenal models made with Lego. I saw a scale model of the Atlas detector at CERN made out of Lego. Wow. The thing was like about 1 meter long and about 70 centimeters each way. It was beautiful. I mean, incredibly detailed.
I mean, the engineering behind it is astonishing, right?
Absolutely. There was a lot of custom parts in there. They were, in those days, they were making custom parts to order as well. But, it was very plainly still a piece of Lego. You could see it was still Lego, but I think, that's art. That's not just scale modeling. That's a talent beyond anything I can imagine. This whole thing of I'm not sure why we need these boxes unless it's a competition, frankly. Unless we're at the IPMS or Telford and we're entering our creation to be judged fairly and with similar criteria to other people's creations. I don't see why we need to say this is scale modeling. Does it make a difference? Not to me. Not to me. It's making something. I guess to me, it would be different if I were a sculptor, especially sculpting abstracts rather than sculpting figures. Even then, to a degree, the scale modeling is there, but maybe you've got more of an artistic, interpretive, not so, for want of a better word, realistic intent in your sculpting. Although some sculptors do, a lot of sculptors don't. And maybe that's where the boundary starts to be different to me, where the intent is one of artistic expression primarily, rather than representation of something that exists separately, be it a concept in Space Marines or something real in Spitfires. That's maybe where there's a bit of an overflow, but again, the techniques can be very, very similar. Techniques can still learn from each other. So I think it's like you got black here and you got white here and you got everything in between, and saying, well, I'm sorry, that's dark grey and that's not quite so dark grey is not very productive to my mind. It's all like a spectrum of ability and skill and creativity and intent, but along the way it's all got to be good for the head. As you said, if it's not fun, why do it? In the words of Ben and Jerry, if it's not fun, why do it? It's goodness knows it's an expensive enough game to be in, this model making. Why spend a lot of money, give yourself a lot of headaches and a lot of sadness and a lot of feeling down about yourself, and it be expensive as well? Don't seem to be any point. Do something else, as you say. Don't play golf. Crap. That's even worse. No, it isn't. It isn't. I love playing golf, and I'm really rubbish at it, but I'm proud of my rubbish nature.
Well,
I think we can still learn. We can still learn.
We'll have to get together sometime, Gary, and have a very poor 9 holes together.
Absolutely. I like the blaspheming hackers cup.
Blasphemers.
I am not a golfer, but I do enjoy going and swinging a club at a ball.
There is a distinction, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's something primal
between a golfer and someone who waves a bit of metal at a ball and hopes to hit a hole sometime that afternoon. Yeah, there is a difference. And maybe that's with model making as well, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure I've told the story before.
Geniuses.
I once went for a round of golf before a guy's wedding. Now, at his behest, so the groom, friend of mine, on the morning of his wedding, had booked a golf course. We all went and played golf.
Not a smart move. Not smart.
But yeah. Well, let's say his father had a very interesting way of counting his strokes, let's say. Yeah.
Well,
after three, it was still his second shot. It's like,
Well, no, I've got a very simple way around it, is that I can never score more than 9 on any given hole, because there's only one square to put your score in. If it intended that you could score 10, there would be 2 boxes.
Yeah.
There's only room for one figure, so you can't score more than 9.
Okay, I'm going to try and balance this consensus a little here. So little thing was Junkie who suggested Lego as a bit, said, okay, make a 54mm figure out of Lego. So this is the other side of it, right? Is obviously that's not going to really work unless you're actually using the little Lego figures, which I suppose you could add some pieces to make it 54mm.
You can paint them.
And then that's a question of resolution, right? Because I think, as you were saying about the model of the CERN, and if you look at the models of the huge, like 3-meter long models of the Star Destroyers, Star Wars Star Destroyers in Lego, there, because the pieces obviously have a finite, what's a one piece? It's about 8mm square or so, isn't it?
Something like that.
That's the lowest resolution of a Lego piece. Over 3 meters and that kind of thing, you lose that and it blends into look like a homogeneous whole. Yes, you can tell it's Lego, especially if you look closer. But trying to do a 54mm when you've got a resolution of 8, you don't have the resolution to represent that.
But then we all remember the early days of 3D printing, especially with the filament printers. You do a 54mm figure of an American infantryman in 54mm from the early days of filament printing, and a blob of plastic. There's no resolution. So what does that mean? 3D printing is not a valid way of doing things. It's intent. It's what you're trying to do. Yeah, resolution is important.
Ian made a comment there. I don't know what he's talking about there, Marcus.
Good for him. Good for him.
Black Pearl is a ship.
I'll come back
Pirates
to
of the Caribbean.
I'll come back to Casey and Howard's comments there, because I still want to explore this little piece a little bit more, because the second part was made out of wood, which for me, I mean, the earliest scale models, I mean, Tamiya started off making wooden models.
Yeah.
Their first models were ships made out of wood. Wooden models were widely used for aircraft recognition, World War II. In the States, actually, there were a whole bunch of companies. I know this because I did research for a video and stumbled upon this. That actually did injection molded plastic kits for aircraft recognition. We didn't have the industry in the UK for that at the time, so we used wood. But really, I mean, wood has been used for representing things, carving,
thousands of years.
Yeah. So
yes,
I'm not sure we can rule wood out, really.
No.
I think wood kind of trumps us on the
it's the OG of
it's
the
the OG,
model building. Yeah.
Wood, stone,
mud.
Yeah, right. So then I'll come to Casey, who says, use your Warhammer painting skills on the Airfix pilot horror figurines. That'll help. I'm not sure anything will help those figurines. But Howard also says, just check out any Golden Demon.
Yeah.
So those of you who aren't aware, Golden Demon is Warhammer's Games Workshop's internal kind of painting competition. So has to be done with Games Workshop figures. They can be converted and stuff, but the base has to be their stuff. And the standard of Golden Demon figure painting is absolutely outstanding. I mean, you only just type it into YouTube, Golden Demon winners from whatever year you want, and from before YouTube even existed, if you can find pictures of those. Astonishing.
I've met one.
Yeah. I mean, they literally spend hundreds of hours on a single figurine model, whatever you want to call it, miniature. Refining blends. When you're talking about 20, 30, 40 layers of paint going onto a figure. And again, very, very thin, very smooth blends, all of these things, creating mostly, almost exclusively done by brush as well.
Yeah.
So the airbrush is a tool that we use a lot, that is used by a lot of mini painters, but when you start to get to the higher echelons, they abandon the airbrush. Maybe they use it for groundwork and base, undercoating things. But really, the Kolinsky Sable brush is, the number one weapon of choice. So I think for me, I do watch a lot of those kind of videos. Again, there's a guy called Marco Frassoni who has the most ridiculous, outrageous Italian accent. So it's always a pleasure watching his videos because they're entertaining just listening to them, even if you don't watch the video. Incredibly talented painter, and the things you can learn from these people, you don't have to be that level of painter, but it's a bit like watching Night Shift or the early Plasmo stuff, when he kind of does a bit more technique sharing rather than just demonstrating doing his projects. If you pick up one or two things from the videos, it can help your modeling. Just take one. Don't try to become Plasmo overnight. That's not going to happen. But if you take one technique and apply it to your models that you haven't tried before, chipping or filters or oil work or whatever it is, hand sculpting, doing welds on an AFV for the first time, all these things, incrementally it'll get you better. And it's the same with, I feel, for miniature painting.
Agreed.
Travis Thompson said there's a 1-to-1 Lego dinosaur exhibition going around to promote the Jurassic Park movies. T-Rex bust was nuts. So there we go. When you get to the resolution of 1-to-1, Lego becomes a lot more viable as a building tool.
Duplo.
Shed also makes the point of the Havilland Mosquito was built of wood originally. So.
Yeah, very true.
Now that kind of brings me to the Lego thing. Kind of reminds me of one thing, which personally I don't really class as modeling. And that is the quick builds from Airfix.
The quick builds. Is that the starter kits or?
No, the quick builds from Airfix are sort of like they are Lego-like. So they're Lego, but they have like the external finish of, the finished bits, so they're smooth and so they're all bespoke. I would say that's a construction kit. It doesn't, for me personally, is it modeling?
I haven't come across one, so I can't really have an opinion about that. Yeah. I need to look into that.
Speak to Moss. Moss will send you one if you've not.
Okay.
Moss raves about them, and it's one thing I tried. To be fair, I held my hand up and said, "Well, I haven't tried one. I'll try one." I tried the Airfix Eurofighter. For one thing, the bloody horizontal stabilizer wouldn't stay on; it kept popping off. But for me, it didn't do anything for me. And again, because it's all pre-colored and pre-finished, it's sort of, there's no creativity in it. There's no
this is snap together thing.
You just put it together and it's there, and it's like
already painted and stuff.
Yeah, well, it's
no, the colored plastic.
Yeah, colored plastic, which is like the finished thing, and it's like, well, for me, that's almost like proto modeling. It's the kind of thing I would give to a younger, more creative child. It's a toy, but one that you have to put together. For me personally, so for me, that's where the line starts to, like, on your scale of, we won't say 50 Shades of Grey because that might bring a different flavour to the discussion.
Yeah.
But that's kind of on the cusp of where it starts to become a toy.
So you would put Gundams in the same category then?
I don't know, because Gundams, typically they do require construction, traditional kind of construction. You can paint them.
Yes.
Can't really paint a quick build. So if there's a thin line, I would put Gundam on the modeling side and quick builds on the not modeling side.
Okay.
If we have to find that, if we have to put a box in,
okay.
we have all this stuff and there's too much to put in one box. We've got to categorize it.
Something's got to go.
That's kind of where the line gets for me personally. What about you, Gary? What do you think about Airfix quick builds and Revell?
I love Airfix quick builds for what they're intended to do, which is primarily get younger people into the concept of spending time doing something to create something and using their hands, hand-eye coordination and concentration, not involving a computer screen.
All right, now I see what you mean.
I'm really happy with that. And by the way, I will stand on the side of the quick build Sherman and Tiger 1 in 1/35th scale with working tracks. They are brilliant. You actually have to pin the tracks together, get them to fit, and they will go along. That is lovely. They are brilliant. I've built both of them, and I do know there have been some people, particularly with the Tiger, who have glued them together, done a little bit of filling, done some spraying, and they actually look really pretty good as kits. But as a gateway to the core skills required of modeling, of concentration, of hand-eye coordination, and learning a little bit of history along the way, perhaps. That's where I think they sit. And yes, they are. Whether we call that modeling or not, again, I'm not too worried about that. It's that
I don't think
between
any of us
Lego
in this
blocks
virtual
and
room
FX
are,
bits, you know.
but we are.
You know. But
we are
I'm happy
deliberately
to.
being
I've
hard
made
on
loads of
ourselves.
them. I've made loads of them. I've done videos of. I did last Christmas. I did 12 of them, one for each of the 12 days of Christmas. They were fun. I enjoyed doing the videos. Yeah, maybe no one enjoyed watching them. I don't know, but I enjoyed making them. But then I could take them apart and give them to someone else, which is also really quite cool. Or I can take them apart and then 6 months later rebuild them, and things like that. They have their place. Yes, they're not. You're not going to see them at Telford anytime soon on an exhibition table, perhaps. But is that what we need to judge things by in a way?
No.
Again, it's people are going to have fun putting it. Yes, it is a construction kit. Like Meccano was a construction kit. Like Lego's a construction kit, perhaps, because you can take it all apart again and rebuild it as something else. But I love them. I think they have a great place and a great intent to draw younger people into perhaps exploring the hobby a bit more.
Yeah, I agree on that. Yeah,
I think that's right. I think I like the phrase gateway. They're a gateway to creative hobbies, if you like.
Gateway drug to polystyrene.
First one's free.
So Patrick Clark makes a really good point here. I've been building models for over 50 years and have always classed myself as a modeler. The term scale modeling is fairly new.
Yeah,
I think that's quite right. I think people can be very hung up on the scale modeling aspect rather than the modeling. I mean, if you think about it, sculptors. I'm thinking about the great sculptors, Michelangelo and the likes. I mean, they were doing one-to-one scale models in stone of subjects that may or may not have existed. They didn't actually have to be a David, but is recognizably a human, the correct proportions and everything, and incredibly skilled. Now, would we class that as a scale model? Not really.
No, we wouldn't, because what we would do is we'd be looking at Michelangelo's David as an example, we'd be measuring it and we'd be saying that the head is out of proportion to the rest of the body. The shoulders are too wide, all these things, which they are, unless you're standing where you're supposed to look at it from and you're looking up at the figure, because it's monumental, it's large. It wasn't designed for people with drones. It was designed for the Borgias to walk past and look up and get the feeling of a figure towering over them. And that involved having slightly larger shoulders and head for an exaggerated perspective effect. So no, it would not get past the rivet counter. I'm sorry, the head is 0.37 millimeters too wide. Yes, but it's supposed to be.
It's got 3 nipples instead of 2.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I don't know what that is, but I've never seen one of them before. Yeah. But it's not a scale model because it's not to a consistent scale.
Well,
it's one of the greatest things of humanity's achievement.
Perspective.
It's designed to be looked at like with panel lines. They're designed to be looked at from a distance on a shelf at a certain scale. You look really close at them. Yeah, they're rubbish. Most decals really close up. It's terrible. On a shelf, a meter away from you, as you're walking past your mantelpiece, they look fantastic.
Yeah,
it's intent. Again, it's intent.
Yeah, and actually on that point about perspective, so if you look at most columns, as in the things that support stuff, the Greeks' Doric columns are not straight because, again, they are designed to be looked at from, because these things usually are like 10, 20 meters tall. And of course, most people, back in the ancient world, didn't even have ladders. So, yeah, they were drones. So they were looking up. So they're designed so that they look straight from the perspective of an observer at 1.6 meters, because people were shorter then, and and that's it, right? But if you actually look at them, they are not cylindrical. If you built, say, the Acropolis with cylindrical columns, it will look wrong. So, yeah, again, we sometimes get wrapped up in arguments. I say we, the royal we, as in modelers in general, can sometimes get wrapped up in these arguments which actually aren't relevant or pertinent at all.
True. Yeah.
Nick also says, check out Billings wooden boat models, totally true to the original. Not heard of them, but then I am not a naval modeler, so I wouldn't have.
I know some of these guys have got scale models, and they have scale modeled blocks that you have to put the rigging through and stuff like that. The rigging detail on them is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, just really, you see
the
that's not
people
going to be a 20-minute build video.
The side riggings,
yeah,
square by square. It's like, all right, fine.
You lost me at rigging. Julian says, I think the problem with quick builds is they don't have a fixed scale, so aren't scale models in that regard.
So they're just models.
Well, the Tiger and the Sherman are 1/35th.
Yeah,
for certain. I don't know about the rest. Yeah, they're probably designed to scale to fit a box or to fit a space. So this is the amount of space a customer desires to fill with a model. So
they make it fit.
Yeah, like the old days, a lot of American model companies used to make like 1/83rd scale this and a 138th one of those. It's all to fit boxes.
So Revell still do it with the Star Wars range. Getting an X-wing and a TIE fighter and a snowspeeder in the same scale is, from Revell, impossible. Bandai, of course, use fixed scales because they're Japanese, and the Japanese are basically a race of engineers. So, of course, everything's to scale. Nick says, I have built the Sherman brick model with my ankle biter grandson, and we are we are now adding bits and going to paint and weather it on a base. He is 7. It's a great intro into modeling. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Sounds fantastic. Simon says, you always need someone to teach younger modelers the techniques to build their own models and grow up so they can pass them skills on to younger people to carry on the hobby. Indeed. Well, now we have YouTube. So,
yeah.
But absolutely.
I pester my son constantly, and he try this. I give him some kits, and he's built 2 cars. He seems to he prefer the Gundam because you don't have to paint or use glue, but he can definitely bang one out really quickly, and he's pretty good at it. So I hope to see him progress in the future.
Absolutely. Fenris, good evening. Good to see you.
Hey, Fenris.
Graham says, would you class Da Vinci as a scale modeler who could also...
Well, he did make it.
As we've said, not a scale modeler. So,
Boot him.
Just a painter. He could do a bit of sculpting on the side.
A fair engineer with designs above his station. That's all it was. And he wrote backwards. What's all that about? Come on. It's just showing off.
Fenris says the Midifan loves her modeling time. Yeah, I think I think probably as an awful lot of people in this hobby, a lot of us had a mentor, whether that is a relative, a friend, someone at a club or at school or something, who originally got us into the hobby in some way. I mean, for me, it was my dad. My dad did scale models when I was a kid. I mean, I was doing models from about the age of 5. Wouldn't be allowed in health and safety today. I remember stabbing my thumb when I was probably about 6 or so. It's one of my earliest memories with one of the disposable Stanley blades. How many people would let their 6-year-old these days run one of those? Painting into the still wet glue on my models. I didn't care because I was doing model with my dad. Even when my dad wasn't there, it was what my dad did. So a lot of us got into that way, and I think it's a great way for parents and whatever relationship you have to spend time, and for children to realize that actually, as you said before, Gary, just looking at a screen isn't the only way you can have fun. And actually sometimes doing things with your hands, spending some time relaxing a little bit is more rewarding than just looking at a screen and playing the latest app or whatever. So not that I'm against any of that. I
always sound old.
Like and subscribe.
Well, I think it's about balance, right? I mean, I've got a PS5, I've got an Xbox, whatever the current one is, can't remember. I love gaming, and some of the games that are available now, DCS, for instance, I've mentioned many times, a phenomenal flight simulator, combat simulator. It's as close to being in an aircraft, a military aircraft, as, let's face it, I'm ever going to get. From a time when, flight sims were kind of a couple of 8-bit gaming, with a frame rate of about 3 per second. If you were lucky. Astonishing. But would I sacrifice modeling for that? It's like, no, I wouldn't. I enjoy both.
You can. Just balances, as you said.
Yeah. And to be honest, modeling is a lot less frustrating than being shot down again in DCS. Maybe it's just a skill thing. Casey says Da Vinci correctly described aerial perspective, called nowadays scale effect. Indeed. But apparently he was rubbish at hanging wallpaper. That's something I didn't know. So the only quick build kits with the scale mentioned in the 2025 catalogue are Sherman and Tiger, listed, as Gary said, 1/35th scale. Yeah. Now, the equivalent from Revell, I believe, is their 109, which I think is 1/32nd.
Yeah, I think so.
It's actually listed as that. So it's more expensive than the actual 1/32nd 109, which is a bit of a quandary to me. So, okay, what about, so Fenris actually has reminded me, I thought of this before. What about the books that you get? The little, I mean, they're not really books. They're like book-sized, put on a bookshelf that then have...
Book nooks.
Book nooks, that's the one. Thank you. They then have like a little scene in there.
Well, I think they are modeling. You're still creating it, and you can furnish it and stuff like that, and put furniture together. I mean, I've been watching Connie on Sundays. She's building similar things, and it's tiny little bits put together painstakingly. It's definitely modeling, in my opinion.
So by extension, what about dolls' houses?
Well,
I'm being deliberately provocative.
No. I'm not provoked. Jesus Christ, you have to do harder than this. I'm just trying to figure out a good way to... I mean, if you're putting the furniture together, you're building the house on your own from scratch, or from a flat pack from IKEA, whatever, and then put all the stuff together before you put it in the dollhouse. Yeah, you're building. It's the same thing as putting a model together, because you have instructions. It's not like you're... What's the difference, apart from this is wood, mainly, or plywood, or MDF, or whatever, and you're using glue, often.
So
people do some amazing scratch building of interiors and things like that.
Fenris comments here, dollhouses absolutely is. And at least here in Florida, to be specific, but the US.
Florida is a special place.
Scale dollhousing.
There you go.
Whereas Science Modeling Shed has a slightly different reaction. And the little things Junkie said, but not a dollhouse made of Lego. Comment, I've seen some very impressive paper card. That was actually, Phil, something I was going to mention earlier. And because I've also seen that. So at the Yeovil model show, I think it was the Yeovil, or I may be wrong. It may be the Salisbury model show a couple of years ago. There was a trade stand and they hadn't turned up. So the display next to them had extended into it. And there were these phenomenal models. And when I looked up, there was something a bit different about them. And then I realized they were paper and card models. And they were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Not an area of the hobby that I've ever really come into contact with really before. But certainly from a distance, as I was walking up, you couldn't tell. They just looked big because they were literally, I think, 1/24 to 1/16 scale. Most of the aircraft, that sort of size, really quite big.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think to paper models?
Same thing.
Yeah.
I don't see the distinction there. So, I mean, I see the similarities, of course. Yeah. So, they're modeling.
Yeah, I've got a paper model of I think a 767 or something like that. Someone sent me. I'm just too scared to make it at the moment.
I have one too, and I was like, I'm putting it away for
It's
now.
Maybe in a little while, one day. I will do it one day, but for the moment, it's just it looks like technique might requirements of technique might give sort of like a definite talent failure along the way somewhere, and I don't really want to expose myself to that at the moment. But I will do it one day. I'll give it a go one day. But we got sent some of those Metal Earth kits the other day, which are just basically they're painted photo etch, but you've got to bend them and tabs and all that. Models. We've got a Catalina. It looks pretty good. Yeah.
If you've got any spare, Marcus would.
No. I'm good.
So I remember. God, this must be early 80s. I'm guessing. I did some. My dad did them, but I again kind of got into them as well. But there were some 1-to-1 scale birds, and I remember paper models of a kestrel. One was
wow.
And it was not easy by any means, but it was really, really impressive. And to me, again, it's certainly modeling. Created a 1-to-1 scale kestrel. You got an idea of how big the bird was, what kind of structure it was, and all that kind of thing. It took skill to make. It didn't require painting because it was all pre-printed card, but you had to, there were skills involved. You had to color the edges and stuff because otherwise you got white edges and things. So different skills to plastic scale modeling, but still modeling and even scale modeling to my mind. Now Graham Ball actually comes up with a point here. If someone just sits and 3D prints 1/35th scale tanks, solid objects not in parts, are they a scale modeler?
They are a figure painter in that case, right? But you're still working on the model. Right? It's still a model, regardless of parts, I guess.
I guess also depends on whether they created the 3D object or whether they just bought it off of a online site where someone else has done that part of the creation. Yeah, otherwise you're printing. It could be anything you print out. But then, as you say, you probably are then going to paint it. What would be the point of just printing a grey plastic Tiger 1? You're going to want to paint it up a bit or do something with it, I'd have thought.
Yeah, for me, because I've thought about this quite a bit myself, because as people know, I have a number of 3D printers. Not all packed away now either. I've started to break them out. So, and printing parts for a model, for me, is no different than buying them in resin, because
Sure.
that's what they are, right? It's still resin. You're adding to an existing kit. You're still doing that. Printing an entire model in parts, again, you're just printing a kit rather than buying it. You know, okay, you might buy the STL and then you're printing it out. Printing an entire tank as a solid object, to me, isn't modeling. It's a model, but if I've had no interaction in it, like you say, Gary, if I've designed that, then absolutely, it's CAD modeling. It's a different type of modeling, different set of skills entirely. But that is obviously, you know, it involves a lot of skill, a lot of patience. But just buying an object, it's a bit like if I buy a statue, if I buy Michelangelo David, does that make me a sculptor? No, it doesn't.
No, that's not.
It makes me maybe
You're a model collector.
tacky rather than an artificionado. But yeah, I mean, painting and everything, yes, those are skills, but it's not modeling in the way that we're, you know, traditionally think of it. We're not making the model. So I think that is actually more of a distinction than perhaps Lego, where you have a set of components and you are actually creating something, you know. And if you make it wrong, it'll look wrong with Lego, right? If you get a 3D printed tank, that's it. It's, you know, it's like buying a Corgi model. Is Corgi scale modeling? No, I don't think it is. You're buying a thing, you know. Now, there are people that take those apart and do. Is that modeling? Yeah, you can argue that is, but I think your active part, us as humans interacting and putting part of ourselves into it, I think is an important piece of the categorization. If we have to, you know, again, make a categorization. Question: are scale modelers good flat pack furniture assemblers, as we're used to following all types of different instruction manuals?
Of course. You don't even need the instructions at that point.
Okay. Well, I would say no for me.
It's in my genes.
If anybody's seen any of my builds, I'm not good at following instructions. So quite often I look at the instructions and say, that's stupid. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, that's the problem. We all think we know better than the flat pack. No, that's the wrong build order. Why would you do that? That's ridiculous.
They can't mean that. And then like halfway through, it's like, oh yeah, they did.
You don't need the instructions for that.
So personally, no, I'm a terrible flat pack furniture assembler. But sounds like Marcus is your man. So.
Hook me up.
Okay. 3D printing lost or spare parts is okay. Adam says, I'd argue if the file object was original source, sure it counts as scale model, since some may not enjoy the building but enjoy the painting, weathering, etc. But again, does that make them modelers or painters? I think modeling traditionally has been the that's for my drink, the creation of a model. I think that's traditionally our understanding. Right? But just actually look up modeling.
Definition.
Yeah. You may need to sort of qualify that a bit, because if you look up modeling on Google, you're likely to get the wrong kind of modeling.
Oh, yes.
And by the look on your face, you just have.
No, I was looking at the AI description, which are always interesting. More detailed breakdown. Physical models. These are physical replicas, like a model ship or a model airplane. So,
I think also if you sort of take a slight step back a bit, I always think about these things in terms of copyright. Like if you buy an STL file and you print it out, can you claim copyright in what you printed out? No, you can't, because you've used someone else's thing and you haven't put in, and the law's quite especially in America, they actually say the skill and judgment, creative skill and judgment. Now, if you haven't done any of your own skill and judgment in creating something, then I don't think you can class yourself much as a modeler. If you do, then that is something different, and you've used something as a base, and you've created something else by decorating it with paint or by putting it into a diorama or whatever it is. You've added that creativity and that skill.
Yeah.
If you just print something off, that's photocopying, essentially, and there's no skill in judgment of that.
Yeah.
So that's I guess that's where I draw.
I think that's a very good way to put it, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Honour. The defence rests.
But Maria would be proud of that answer, I'm sure. She's a solicitor.
Right, there you go.
Adam McDonald says, buys a desk from IKEA, ends up building a chair. So
I think
that's probably one of the problems, right? With
that's a skill issue, in my opinion.
Because it's like, how many times? I mean, I know I've done a lot. Is I bought a kit and then I converted it into something else. Like, oh, I've got this I don't know, panther, but I'm converting it into a berg panther, or whatever. I mean, now of course you can buy kits for just about every iteration of everything. But there was a time back in the day, and certain subjects you still have to do conversions. So yeah, if you just get that, it's just like, well, I don't really want this cabinet. What I really want is a cabinet that also. So yeah, if we applied modeling to our everyday lives, we would have a very different set of things in our houses, I feel.
I think so too.
Definitely. Yeah.
Alrighty. So I'm just trying to make sure I've covered all of the.
As Fleet Air Arm aircraft are my particular thing. If I had bought 12 chairs, they'd all be in different colour schemes, and half of them would be folded up. So.
So Nick Johnson actually mentioned something else, and I have a little catalogue of these micro paper models. I'd never heard of them until I bought it was from Wincanton Auctions. I got a box of stuff, and one of these little catalogues was in there. British company, and yes, on the market long before plastic models, and they do require quite a bit of skill, particularly because PVA, obviously PVA glue's been around for a long time, or its equivalents, and that's generally what you use for paper models. It's not quick. It's strong, but it's a pain in the ass. Paper models, like gluing something, like a plastic model, you glue something together. I mean, nowadays with modern plastics and modern liquid cements, a minute later you're good to go, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a good bond, good plastic. Okay, with Tacom it's a bit different, but we're excluding Tacom from this description, right? Then it's a bit like using PVA. It's about the same sort of time, 30, 40 minutes, maybe. The other part is Nick also says that they remember those bird models. I think they did come in a book. Yes, I think you're right. The Kestrel sticks in my mind particularly. There were others. I'm not quite sure what the others were. Maybe I'll have to try and find one of those books. And tell you what, if I can find it, or if anybody listening, or any of my patrons or channel members can find one of those and can get it to me, I'll do a build of that on the channel.
Cool.
Julian says one carer claimed to have done a woodworking course, so was given a flat pack desk to assemble. He put the top on upside. How can you put the top one upside down? Usually they don't have
holes.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been fun to watch.
Craig said Fleet Air Arm chairs would only Monday till 12 on Friday, and after that you wouldn't find them until after the weekend. I'm not sure I understand that, Craig.
I think the general implications of Fleet Air Arm doesn't work at weekends.
Oh, work.
Hi, Beyond Scale Models. Good to see you. And Kit Model Fix. Two favorite models I scale. Oh, thank you very much.
Oh,
Well,
very kind.
you should
Very
check out
kind.
Marcus as well. He's
Hell yeah.
he's like a sweary Father Christmas version of us.
Yeah.
Not completely untrue. It's hard to deny.
It's because in Sweden they only have lingonberries and they're not very good. Yeah.
Hey.
They're okay for making. They're okay as kind of like an accompaniment to meat or stuff, but they're. I mean, not sort of thing. They're not like raspberries, are they? You wouldn't just like go pick your own and eat them in.
No, they're not. They're not. I have to.
They're sort of like those little poisonous ones that you get in the UK. Is it Rowan or something?
No, they're not. No. Oh, dear
So,
me.
for those of you who don't know, Marcus is Swedish originally, but for some reason is in the Netherlands. How he managed to get there, I don't know.
I was drunk.
All those open borders.
Yeah.
We closed ours to stop him getting here in 2016.
I started walking and I ended up.
So for everybody, I will put links, of course, to Gary, as I'm sure you already know, but also to Marcus's channels in the description of this afterwards. Please do check out their channels. Question. Alex, could you? Oh, well, a very timely question, Julian. So, actually, if you send me if you send me your channel link, Marcus, I'll put it up in the.
Oh, give me a minute.
I don't know if you can put it in directly. I don't know how StreamYard will let us or not. So here's a more serious question. One I'm sure you can all agree with. Eggplanes are not scale models.
Oh, Eggplanes.
False.
I have one, but I haven't built it
yet. Did you put it in the private chat or Discord, Marcus?
I'll put it in the private chat.
Okay.
I mean, I have an Eggplane. It's a Santa tank, basically.
I mean, I have many things. It doesn't make them scale models.
Didn't say they were, but you put them up together, right? It's like a quick model, I guess.
Okay, so perhaps we should have a quick vote in the chat. Eggplanes, scale models or not?
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to prejudge anybody, but they're not, right? I'm not telling you there's a right or a wrong answer, but the right answer is no.
Oh, wow. Do you put them together? Do you assemble them?
Yeah.
Do you possibly paint them?
Paint them?
Are they in scale with anything? No.
But I thought we agreed, looking at David, for instance, he was out of proportion as well, depending on how you look at it, right?
And we agreed that Michelangelo was not a scale modeler.
That is also true, but we're talking about perspective, right?
They're models, they're not scale models. But they are models, they're valid models, of course they are. They're brilliant. I love making them.
I mean, models. Valid.
I've never tried one.
They're caricatures of things. Well, you were talking earlier about how the Americans made all these. You made all these wooden things to teach aircraft recognition, right? How do you teach aircraft recognition? You pick out the most important details that you can look at quite quickly. So if you emphasize those in a caricatural form, you'll remember them. There's a utility to egg models in aircraft recognition by emphasizing, like a lightning. You have like the radome with the exhaust. You have the slab tail. You have the two engines, one over the other, and you have the shape of the wings. if you emphasize all those, you'll never forget what a lightning looks like, ever. Because it's the key points. I think they're brilliant things. They're models. And they're really good if you are really in the dumps about model making. And you go to put them together. They give you a bit of a laugh, put a smile on your face again. That looks really funny. Great. Off you go. And you can start doing your scale models and being all clever. But I've built several of them, and I think they're fun. They're just fun. Again, this is fun. This hobby is fun, and I've no problem at all with planes, tanks, ships, or any of them.
So there are.
That's just me.
So new favourite members of the channel: Craig, Simon.
He's cherry picking.
That's an acceptable answer.
Yeah, this is called editorial control.
That's borderline, Phil. That's borderline. Julian, straight to the bottom of the class. I am, of course, joking. So personally, Eggplanes are, they're not for me. But I will be stocking them in the shop because, as Gary said, I mean, I recognise the value of them, and as a Mojo build, I mean, they're a matter of like less than a dozen parts usually. They're funny, they're quirky, they're quite cheap. They're like £10. If that encourages somebody to get into the hobby, whether they're young or or not, they just think, oh, that looks funny, I'll buy that, and they stick it together, and it's just like, that was quite fun. I'll do something else, maybe something more serious, and that won't make me look like a fool. Maybe it encourages them to make better life choices. There are all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, really. Yeah,
they could go and do Warhammer and build some very accurate models of orcs, for example. So,
yeah. So, I mean, I think we are.
I did a P47 a little while ago, and I actually found it really useful for testing out different types of metallic finishes. Because it's a cheap thing, but because the surfaces are big and bold, you can mess around a lot more as well, and you can have some fun with it that way as well. So they've got their uses, and they're just fun.
Yeah,
paint mills, absolutely. Yeah, they've got their place, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But again, not going to see that many on competition tables.
No. So Kirchhoff also says Eggplanes are like girls on a Panzer. Funny, I did like the surprise. Yeah, I mean, there are also the girls. I can't remember what that range is called. Girls and Panzers or something like that.
Girls und Panzer. Yeah, I see it on Scalemates.
Yeah,
and a friend tells me about them. But I don't know what it is. Yeah, it's some sort of anime type thing, from what I can understand. All these schools compete in some sort of. But the tanks are really well modelled for some reason. Why they just didn't go crazy and just to design a whole range of weirdo tanks. But no, the such and such prefecture middle school is using the late version of the Lee tank in this competition. And it's like, what? It's a cultural thing, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say it's good to see you, but then you said Eggplanes are fantastic, so I'm not so sure.
Wow.
My man, no, but dude, good dude.
I think, I mean, the thing is with things like, Eggplanes, I mean, they're very recognizable, right? You don't forget if you've done an Eggplane.
No.
I mean, we've made I've made a lot of jokes at their expense, but in terms of getting people into the hobby or getting people to recognize it or remember something, if they're not a modeler, are they more likely to remember this ridiculous looking like little F-16, kind of caricature kind of thing, or a World War II Spitfire yeah, they're probably more likely to remember the caricature thing, you know. So, and again, if you enjoy it, I think the one theme that we've kind of said all the way through this is these kind of distinctions are a little bit silly, you know, and trying to put things in a box also a little bit silly. And if you enjoy it, it doesn't really matter.
No.
Graham Ball makes an appalling joke. Do a squadron of Eggplanes scramble. Disappointed. Very disappointed.
I thought that was pretty good.
I'm happy to reassess my channel membership now. Not the people I thought, honestly. Oh dear. There's another one here. Oh God. If your eggplane goes wrong, you can call it a scrambled eggplane. Oh dear. Nunu has a few in his collection. Fun and a good mojo build. but I'm just an assembler, so don't take my word for it. So this is another side actually, which I find very bizarre, is, you know, the term assembler as some sort of derogatory kind of thing within modeling snobby circles, I guess. I guess,
yeah. I mean,
Don't
I would
really-
classify myself as an assembler as well, because I like the building part, bar one kits.
And I think that
Yeah.
kind of distinction is fine if you're self-identifying as a, you know, oh, I like the building process more, so I'm an assembler.
Yeah.
Rather than, I've heard it used in a derogatory sort of term, it's just like, oh, you're not really a modeler, you just assemble kits.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
As meaning like, because you don't scratch build, or like you don't retexture all your AFVs with, you know, cast text, you know, which to me is like priggishness of an order of magnitude higher than
in any hobby, any sport, anything in life, there's always that group of people who will look down on others. There's always that. And to them, I can only say, well, I will never know you, so bye-bye.
Julian continues to go down in my estimations as he says all the egg yolks are coming out now. And Dave, World War II Scale Models Dave, has very kindly once again gifted 5 Man's Model Moments memberships.
Oh, cool.
Thank you very much. If you are a recipient of one of those, please do go to the, I don't think it's pinned, but it is a members only comment on YouTube. There are only a couple of those, so you shouldn't have to sift through. The link for the Discord channel is on there. Come and join us and drop a hello and look at some of the silly things that we get up to there. Thank you very much, Dave, for that. Nick Johnson says the Charlie Hebdo of models.
Oh my God.
Oh dear. Taxi for Graham Ball. Very good. So what are your personal limits then, guys? What would you do in modeling and not do? So as I say, for me, I will do an egg plane. I probably will do an egg plane when I get them in the shop. I already said I wouldn't, but you know, I'll take one for the team. Quick builds are probably my kind of line on. I did a quick build to try it. I didn't really get anything from it, you know. Again, because I guess I couldn't put anything in. It was just like you put the pieces in. It's not like Lego, but you could disassemble it and assemble it in a different way, which, you know, involves your creative bit. There's no painting or anything. It's just there. It's done. I could imagine doing that if my kids were small, you know, 20 years ago, for them to play with. And then if they broke it, you can just put it back together. But for me, that's not, it doesn't engage my hobby sense, if you like. What about you, Marcus?
Good question. I mean, I'm eclectic, right? I dabble in several different types of areas. I try anything once, and then when I fail miserably, I don't do it again.
You abandon it like the Black Pearl.
It's not abandoned. I actually built it Saturday before last. I was building. So, yeah.
Okay.
I might take a couple of in between, but I am. Yeah.
So it may be finished when Trump's out of office in 2035.
A few years, yes. I am in no rush.
How about you, Gary? Where does the scale model or modeling hobby end or begin and start for you?
I don't know, really. I was actually I actually started putting together a series of videos where I try other things to just see what it's about. So I've got these Space Marines. I've got a Gundam, a Justice Gundam, real grade thing. It means nothing to me, but I'll find out what it means. And
144
it might be done with 144 scale. Again, scale. But I don't, whatever. I'll try the paper plane at some point. I'll try these little Metal Earth things. I just want to try different types. The thing I don't look forward to most of all is resin. Normally, resin planes. Because of the gun kit generates when you're sanding stuff and having to use CA glue a lot or PVA, as you say, either CA glue, which you really have to get it right first time, or PVA, which you've got to wait a long time for it to set. One or the other. But then I've made one Unicraft kit a while back of a completely never even got made British plane from World War II. I really enjoyed making it. And I made that new Aerocraft Miles M52 that's basically 3D printed resin. And it's a beautiful thing. So, maybe I'll revisit that. But it's things that scare me more than things I don't want to do because I don't think they're modeling. So I've got a resin kit that's got white metal parts and it's got a vac form canopy. And just like, again, I don't think my skill set is there yet to enjoy the build process, but I'll try them and I'll make a video out of them and I'll get some views. So job's a good one. That's what my job is in life now, making videos for people to laugh at,
Yeah, I mean, I've got a model here. This is a YF-19 demonstrator.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Nice.
So that's from Macross. Okay. It's a Hasegawa kit. So this is a 1/72nd scale Hasegawa kit of something that doesn't exist. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I've got an Ace Combat 3 Shinden as well, which again doesn't exist, So I think limiting our hobby or trying to draw these artificial boundaries and boxes, like you said, Gary, is ultimately pointless, right? I mean,
it should be fluid and dynamic.
It should be. It should be fluid.
I mean, there are things that I don't really want. I might try and think, I probably won't bother doing that again. But it doesn't make them intrinsically a wrong thing.
Yeah.
No.
It means it's just not my thing.
Exactly.
That's all it is. My wife likes dancing. I don't dance. Doesn't mean that dancing is a bad thing. You know what I mean? It's just because it's just not for me. That's all.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a YouTube video. I didn't watch the video. I just saw the thumbnail of it and the little start of it because for some reason it auto plays on a TV. We watch YouTube now on the TV. It's got its own app, and on that it starts playing the first few, like the minute or something.
Okay.
So I saw that, and it was one of it wasn't a book nook. It was like a scratch built kind of equivalent. And it was called the Butterfly Collector or the Collector or something. And it was of a, kind of turn of the century, 20th century, 19th, 20th century butterfly collector's room. So with all of the cabinets with the pinned butterfly, and it was amazing. And I just thought that looks incredible. I'd like to do something like that as well, and there's no doubt that was a scale model. I mean, it looked indistinguishable from kind of a photograph of a 19th century butterfly collector's, queen room, with the added advantage that you don't actually have to kill any butterflies.
But there is that, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like the paper models I was mentioning before, I would love to find one of those old books and do that kestrel again.
I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, probably on eBay for horrific amounts of money. I mean, Nunu here says it quite well. There is no limits as long as I have fun doing a bit of everything. From starter sets to 3D printing droids and painting them, I'm on it. Main thing is having fun, which I think is exactly. Gary spoiled it at the beginning by saying the end result, but he was absolutely right at the beginning. Having fun is the important thing about any hobby, and especially for us as modelers. If you're having fun assembling something or printing and painting it or making something out of wood or making it out of Lego, it's all okay,
Yeah.
And I think any group which excludes you on the basis of what you're doing.
Yeah.
I just finished last week a 1/350th scale Yamato made out of whatever Chinese company it was, knockoff Lego. It's huge. I mean, the thing's like 85 centimeters long or something. It's in the shop now. It was quite enjoyable. It's really solid. It was a good build.
Yeah.
Would I consider it superior to a 1/350th Yamato by Very Fire or somebody? No, absolutely not. But then if I did that, it would take me a hell of a lot longer and possibly include me messing it up quite a lot, including a lot of photo etch, So I think it's like you said, Gary, there's a lot of things that I don't necessarily want to do, but it doesn't make them invalid. It just means it's not necessarily, I don't want to do a tall ship with a lot of rigging because the idea of that just doesn't appeal to me. It
scares me.
It doesn't scare me. I just think that looks really boring. Doing all that rigging. Oh my God. It's like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I get that some people love that, and that's great, So Andy Bowden asks a question here. So scale modeling now, we've defined scale modeling in this one. Who, in your opinion, produces the best kit instructions? I presume you meant kit, not kitty instructions, because that could be a different question. I mean,
I have no clue personally. I don't know. I think they're all good or bad. They have their bad moments.
I have a fairly concrete opinion here. I think it's ICM. And I say ICM because I think most kit manufacturers these days, make pretty good instructions in terms of they're usually 3D isometric views. They usually produce on a computer. Airfix are very good, especially in use of color and pulling things out. The bit that elevates ICM is that they also go above and beyond, and they have their YouTube video instructions as well.
Oh, those are exceptional. That's exceptional.
It just adds that extra dimension in the same way that YouTube has added to scale modeling in general, in learning techniques and stuff from the 1990s when it was in magazines. There's something that you can get from seeing somebody actually do it you can't get from static photos of the same thing. So that is, to me, what elevates ICM above the other companies at the moment. Other companies might do slightly better, CAD rendered instructions. The best of airfixes, I think, are probably just a little bit better because of, they're showing you where to glue things and stuff. But some of those also don't have frame layouts, which ICM do. ICM also include mask templates. So I think overall, ICM come out on top for me. What about for you, Gary?
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with you. The way that you can, because with all everyone else's instructions, you've got that lovely isometric view. So you've got one of 8 viewpoints, maybe, for a given thing. You can rotate it and do, but the rules say there's maybe 8 viewpoints, whatever. But if that part is a certain shape, and when it says, put into this part here, and then the next frame, the next panel is the same view with the part fitted, and you can't tell how that part exactly went in.
Yeah.
That's hard work. So what you do is you go to their YouTube and you watch it in 3D from any old angle. That they pick the best angle using the CAD data as the source material, and they actually show it, the part going into place with a little thing saying A16, B34. It's
and then it will
brilliant.
rotate around, so you get like a different angle on it.
Exactly. That is
Bombsight
completely exceptional.
26 Marauder that they did was exactly like that. From the cut instructions, I was like, okay, so it goes on like this. And it didn't fit. And I was like, what? And I watched the video instructions. It's like, oh, I was trying to attach the wrong part of it, which you couldn't tell from the 3D view. But when it rotates it around, it's like, oh, okay. And then it becomes clear. And that's all you need, is just that moment of clarity.
Which would have saved me 2 weeks waiting for replacement for the Jaguar undercarriage that I completely messed up first time round. Although I will say a big shout out to airfix for sending all 12 parts of the 2 main undercarriage legs to me for free. And you didn't use my channel web email. I just used my private email to do it. So it wasn't like, oh, here's a YouTuber, got to get it done. So big shout out to, but when I got it, when I really looked at the instructions again, I looked again and again and again and looked around and looked, but I put it on the wrong. There's like 2 places it could go, and I put it on the wrong one. And what was worse is I'd forced it to go into the wrong one. So
that's what you do, right?
When I did it the right way round, it all, it's like, oh, it fits. Okay, maybe I won't send that angry email to Paramjet. Oh, how can you possibly? But with ICM, I've been sitting there trying to dry fit it. Oh, for goodness sake, I'd have gone on like, oh right, it's the other one, right? Yeah, I'm with that. That would have saved a lot of heartache.
Some of the older kits that don't have that, I've built those and I really miss. Like, and it's usually only like once or twice in a kit that you need them. Yeah. But for that once or twice, it's just priceless.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
Nick says, for us, there is no skill in building an airfix brick kit. But what about transforming it by painting and weathering it? Surely that can count as modeling. Absolutely. Yeah, I would say so. Because then you are putting in your bit. I mean, if you, in some regards, taking something like that and elevating, and I've seen people do it with all kinds of stuff like toy kits and things, or toys, and transforming those is actually more difficult in many respects than making a traditional model because they're not built as that to start with. So you have to do more work. You effectively have to it's a bit like if you try to make the Airfix Bristol Belvedere into a reasonable kit. You have to undo so much of what is actually there that, I mean, you only have to look at Greg's build a bit.
The early Buccaneer model was the same. It was designed to be a toy, so you could pull the wings out and fold them.
Okay.
Yeah, it was designed as a toy.
The Bristol Super Freighter, the doors at the front, I mean, those hinges are, they have, Matt from Model Minutes put it really well. He said they had play value, and he was absolutely right, because then kits were aimed at modelers. They were toys, really. It evolved into, and there were other people that did modeling as a serious thing, but they weren't bagged kits hanging in newsagents for 50-year-olds. They were there for kids. Also, shout out for Airfix as well, because they sent me a new set of decals for the Bristol Super Freighter after I completely screwed mine up with masking tape. So thank you, Airfix. Also, thank you, ICM, for sending me a MiG 29, which I also screwed up.
Well, at least you can get new parts. That's the best thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to screw up.
Simon's Modeling Shed says, when you're doing modeling for your own level or club level, then anything goes. But when it comes to competition modeling, you'll have to stick to the rules based. Yeah, I mean, that's competitions are an entirely different matter. It's a bit like games, coming full circle back to Games Workshop. The Golden Demon is Games Workshop sculpts, Games Workshop minis, and they can define that and set all the rules because it's their competition. You know, it's like YouTube. I don't like a lot of things that YouTube does, but it's their sandbox and I'm playing in it. So you go around somebody's house, you know, and they say, oh, would you mind taking your shoes off? You're just like, no, I don't take the shoes off in my house. Yeah, but you're not in your house. You're in my house now, so you take your shoes off. You know, if you don't like that, you don't come in my house. So, yeah, I get that. Competitions are a very letterboxed view of our hobby. Okay, I think that is actually a really good, like almost closing statement there. Model making is a joy for all ages. I think that's a fantastic sentiment. I love that. I collect army men, and people say to me that I'm too old for them. I would actually flip that round. I think people who think that, oh, you should grow up out of that, or you're too old for that. Who's got the older mindset there? You know, it's just like the people who can't see the joy in simple pleasures.
Yeah. Sounds like my dad, you know.
Yeah, it's just like, so what? You want to chase a career and do Excel for 50 years and then die? It's like, okay, here we go. I'll enjoy myself sticking plastic together and occasionally getting my plane and going.
So many perks. Blue.
That would be an interesting poll. See how many people actually make their kits and go with more.
Yeah, I'll call it the honesty poll.
Yeah. And it's going to be anonymous, obviously. And yes, I do as well.
I think Gary and Alex need to be demoted from scale modelers.
No, we're entertain, educate. That's what we do. We're like the BBC, aren't we? Yeah.
Oh God,
I don't think I've ever built a model where I haven't made any mistakes. I don't think so.
Or the intention of the BBC, I should say.
I'll be the BBC of the 1980s.
Entertain, inform, and educate, or something like that, isn't it? So we're entertaining as well as educating and informing.
You want to be the
That's
BBC
our intent
of the 90s, actually. You know, it's just like not the 70s because there were all kinds of dubious things.
Yeah.
The 90s when it still had its intent, not the modern BBC, which is just weird.
Corporate.
Anyway, swiftly moving on from that, we are coming to the witching hour. So I just want to thank everybody in the chat for coming and joining us tonight and chewing over the fat of what could potentially have been a very controversial subject. But I think we navigated it well. I think Gary's opening statement was pretty good, actually, setting the ground. I think Marcus and I are pretty much in total agreement with that.
Yeah.
I want to thank Gary, as always. I want to thank Marcus as a newcomer to this stream, but not a newcomer to many, I'm sure. I will, as always, link their channels in the description of this. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week. Have a fantastic weekend when you get there. Hopefully see you on the next one. Okay?
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Ta-ta.
Bye.